A point of order, the Honourable Phil Heatley.
Speaker, in my introductory speech, I should have pointed out that I wanted the Primary Production Committee to consider the bill and that the committee report finally to the House on or before the 27th of April 2011, and I'd just like to inform the House of that, and I'm seeking leave to do so.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Call Shane Arden.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Aquaculture Legislation Amendment Bill number 3. Mr. Speaker, it's been interesting listening to the speeches from both sides of the House and particularly the Minister's reasons for coming forward with the bill. As the chair of the Primary Production Select Committee, we undertook a study tour to South Australia last year, and one of the things that overwhelmed me, I don't know that it overwhelmed anybody else, but it overwhelmed me, was the massive growth we saw in aquaculture in South Australia, to the point now that it represents about 1/3 of the South Australian economy. And so the obvious question to ask in that process was, at what cost? What environmental cost? What other costs? And I have to report back to the House, Mr. Speaker, in the amount of research that we were able to do and the people we spoke to, both from scientific backgrounds and environmental backgrounds, and of course the meetings we had with parliamentarians there, the amount of environmental impact has been, at the best, very minimal. So in answer to some of the concerns raised by the Green Party in the contribution earlier on, and the Honourable Damien O'Connor, where he suggested that the powers the Minister may have under this omnibus bill, which of course at a later stage in the parliamentary process will be divided up into more than one bill, in his comments he said that he feared the amount of power that a Minister may have under the proposals. Well, I can, I guess to some extent, sympathise with that, because you see, if we were to have a Labor government with a Green Minister, the aquaculture industry would not be able to progress at all. There would be no progress at all in this industry. In fact, if you look at what's happened, Mr. Speaker, in recent history, there has been no progress in this industry. An industry that potentially has up to $1 billion worth of export earnings. If you look at what New Zealand's low-hanging fruit is, Mr. Speaker, in terms of potential for growth going forward, it will be, without doubt in my mind, the export of high-quality protein products with integrity and traceability. And, Mr. Speaker, we can tick all of those boxes. The concept of the triple bottom line, which is touted much by those on the green side of the political divide, is not a new concept to us that have been involved in the farming industry for years. The idea of having a balance between economic, social and environmental concerns is something that's absolutely fundamental to the New Zealand economy, to our way of life and to the farming systems we employ. Mr. Speaker, under the current legislation, we have a situation where we have these aquaculture management areas, and in the last 5 years there have been no new developments at all under that regime. None. Zero. Nothing. Now, surely that meets the concerns that the Green member raised about the potential environmental impacts. There are none, because there's been no development. But, Mr. Speaker, you cannot have a growing economy, a dynamic economy, at the bottom of the South Pacific, dependent on exports for its way in the world, for the standard of living that we've all come to appreciate and demand from successive governments, healthcare, education, high-quality communications and a high standard of living. You cannot have those things. They do not exist where you do not have economic development. So, Mr. Speaker, the purpose of the bill is to try and clear some of these regulatory roadblocks that exist for the development of aquaculture in New Zealand. Aquaculture can be done on a sustainable way, and I'm reminded of one of those who spoke to us in South Australia, who was of German descent about 5 generations ago, and I won't use names because that would personalise it too much, but this person said to us, look, we left Central Europe 5 generations ago because of bureaucratic persecution. And last year, after having invested millions of dollars in development in this country, millions of dollars worth of economic development in this country, we left New Zealand for South Australia to escape bureaucratic persecution. So you need to reflect on that a little bit. As we grow and develop as a first world country, we need to learn the lessons, I guess, of our forebears and of our origins, and I include the tangata whenua in that, and some of the examples given by our colleague from the Maori Party of early development in New Zealand that wasn't and never would be environmentally sustainable. Those lessons need to be learnt along with what we know now through modern science and what is a potential for us in terms of developing a sustainable and dynamic and economically viable aquaculture industry. Different members touched on the different types of aquaculture farming. One of the things that was very, very obvious to us when we looked at not only the Australian example but our own example here in New Zealand, that technology has moved on and you can now farm fin fish in areas where it has been identified that these fish will grow and thrive without having a major environmental impact. And you can actually feed them on land-produced feeds, not wild fish captured, which of course would not be sustainable. So there are a range of options that are now available that weren't even 10 years ago, Mr. Speaker, and so I think members should wait until the bill gets to the Select Committee. They should bring their concerns to that committee. I'm sure the submitters will. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the process going forward.